What if I told you that there's one skill where if we all learned it, the world would probably be a much better place? That might sound a little dramatic, but stay with me. So many of the biggest issues we face today, violence, addiction, broken relationships, burnout, can all be traced back to one thing: challenges in regulating our emotions. Of course, there are a lot of things that contribute to these challenges, like societal rules and expectations, but in this video, I want to focus on emotional regulation. So today, I'll touch on what exactly emotional regulation is, why it matters more than a lot of us realize, ways to practice emotional regulation, and how even small changes and improvements in this area can ripple out to make a big difference. This is something I care deeply about, and I hope by the end of this video, you might too. So stay tuned. What is emotional regulation? I feel like that's a word a lot of people just kind of throw around, but what exactly is it? And what does it look like? And how do we do it? Basically, emotional regulation is our ability to notice an emotion, tolerate the intensity of it without totally withdrawing or blowing up, and then respond in a way that aligns with our values. It's not about being calm all the time, having no emotion, or never feeling strong emotions. It's more about having the tools to ride the emotion without it totally ruining your day or your relationships. From a scientific standpoint, emotional regulation is tied to our prefrontal cortex. That's the part of our brain responsible for decision-making and impulse control. When we're dysregulated, we can fall into the fight or flight mode, which is when our prefrontal cortex goes offline and we're living in our survival or emotion brain. We all know what happens when we're operating from that place. We might say things we don't mean, do things we don't mean that we might regret later. So, not fun. And we do actually need that part of our brain to survive. But the problem is sometimes it tries too hard when we don't really necessarily need it to be trying so hard. So when we're building skills to regulate our emotions, literally learning how to strengthen the part of our brain that helps us pause, reflect, and respond versus react. So it's really not just about feeling better, it's about how to have more agency over our life and our emotions. So why does emotional regulation matter so much? Like, why am I saying this one skill could make the world a better place? Well, think about what happens when people don't know how to regulate their emotions. Either explode or lash out. That could ruin relationships and friendships. We could spiral into anxiety, or we could implode, numb out, disconnect, bottle everything up until it leaks out in other ways. Think about someone who turns to alcohol or drugs every time they're overwhelmed or anxious. That's not just a bad behavior, a flaw of character. It's usually a survival strategy when emotional pain feels so unbearable that we have to do something to not feel it. It's a way of coping. Or take a parent who never learned how to regulate their anger. That emotional reactivity can get passed down to their kids who learn to walk on eggshells or learn that emotions are bad and unsafe, or even dangerous and unpredictable. And if that's the message you receive about emotions, then how might you respond to emotions in the future? They might struggle with emotional regulation because they were never given the space to safely express emotion, or learn how to process them in a healthy way, or learn healthy conflict resolution. Thus, the cycle continues. We even see this at work. Managers who micromanage or melt down under pressure, or coworkers who can't take feedback without getting defensive. The ripple effect is everywhere. I mean, if emotional regulation is this important, why aren't we all walking around regulating our emotions? Well, because a lot of us were never really taught how, and a lot of societal messages, especially in the West, teach us that emotions are bad. A lot of us didn't grow up in schools or families that taught, hey, here's what you do when you're feeling this emotion. A lot of the times, emotions are responded to by saying, stop crying, or get over it, or go to your room, which basically tells us that big emotions are something to hide and to be ashamed of, or something that's bad, worthy of punishment. On top of that, we live in a society, especially in the West, that tends to glorify productivity, independence, and stoicism. Feeling too much is often seen as a weakness. You're supposed to be fine, keep working, keep pushing through. But when emotions aren't addressed or dealt with in healthy ways, it can lead to things like addiction, relational challenges, numbing out, or even worse, violence. And if you've lived in stressful, traumatic situations, or environments where you didn't feel seen or safe, your brain had to adapt to survive. That might mean going numb or shutting down, or being on high alert all the time. It was doing its job, and that's what it's supposed to do. It was keeping you alive, and it was keeping you safe. Your body might have learned that staying regulated was not safe or even possible. And now your brain still might be responding to present day stress like it's not safe. So if you struggle with emotional regulation, it does not mean that something's wrong with you or something's bad about you. This is something you can learn and practice. Sometimes our nervous systems just get really good at protecting us, and you can thank them for that, but we can always teach it something new. So how do we practice emotional regulation? Because it's not just a mystical talent that some people are born with and some people aren't. It's a skill. And like any skill, it takes practice, patience, and a little bit of trial and error. I think of emotional regulation as that space between an event and a reaction. When something happens, we might have an emotion about it, and then we react on that emotion. So if we're able to live in that space in between a little bit longer, that's where the work happens. If you're able to work in that space, you can build emotional regulation skills. One of the simplest places to start in emotional regulation is literally just naming your emotion. That might sound small, but studies show that if you're able to put a label on the emotion you're feeling, I'm having an anxious feeling, or I'm having an overwhelmed feeling, it actually helps calm the amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear and anxiety. It's like telling your nervous system, hey, I see you. You're not alone in this. We got this. And from there, it's about building that space between the event and the reaction. So also within that space, you can do things like deep breathing, grounding yourself through your senses, or even just saying, I need a minute and stepping away. And there are bigger practices you can do, like within the therapy space, where you can learn cognitive behavioral therapy skills, acceptance and commitment therapy skills, or whatever resonates with you. But these are really good places to start. So it's not about never getting triggered or never feeling a strong emotion. It's really about, again, expanding your capacity to experience that emotion and not letting it totally overtake your day. The more you practice, the more resilient and self-trusting you become. And this can have an amazing impact. It doesn't just change you, it changes other people around you. When you learn to respond instead of react, you create safety in your relationships. You model what it looks like to feel deeply without causing harm. And the crazy part is that a regulated nervous system is actually contagious. If we're with someone with a regulated nervous system, we feel more regulated. Research shows that kids who grow up with parents who have an overall regulated nervous system develop stronger emotional skills themselves. And in any relationship, romantic, professional, platonic, even just day-to-day interactions, emotional regulation builds trust. Imagine if more people you knew were really good at this, or if this was taught in schools. If leaders practiced it, the ripple effects are endless. And it starts with you. Maybe today, find one moment where you can live a little bit longer in that space between an event and a reaction and see what you can do in there. Well, I hope this video was helpful for you, and if it was, please like, share, and subscribe. I post videos on Fridays about music therapy, mental health, expressive arts, fun stuff like that. So subscribe if you're interested, and I hope to see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.